I fell in love with football and decided to play 4 years of college football, which was the greatest decision of my life. But I also am aware of the fact that black men sometimes become a self-fulfilling prophecy where they're only seeing themselves as an athlete because that's what people recognize them as, or they're only seeing themselves as the jock or the guy that's fetishized and sought after by the women around them, and so they only start to fall into that trap and behave in a certain way. And so I just, like I said, I had an opportunity to take about 15, 20 black boys on an HBCU tour last week and expose them to black culture in Morehouse, at FAMU, and all these other places. And I could see their eyes opening to the fact that when they go to college, it will be an opportunity for them to have a clean slate and portray themselves or present themselves on campus in the light that they want to be seen in. And that'll probably be the first time in their lives that they're able to have that opportunity.
It's your man, Mr. Dean, a.k.a. Cross. You listen to the Man Up Club Presents on Holy Culture Radio. I'm here with my man, Mr. Harper, who is a very accomplished man. Hails out of Chicago, South Side. Okay, man, so, with Chicago got a lot going on right now. You grew up there. You talk about your grandmother being the matriarch, of your family and being a staple in the community. Very accomplished to be able to buy property and what have you. Talk to me about what you think, your perspective on what's happening in Chicago right now with some of the moves that Trump is making in regards to crime and violence and, moving in National Guard and things like that, man. What's your take?
I think anybody who's interested in policy and who cares about the direction of our country should be looking at what's going on in Chicago. I think Chicago, in a lot of ways, is a standard. And when Chicago fails at something, people notice. When Chicago succeeds at something, people notice. Even sports, as a longtime Bears fans, I know that folks always know when the Bears lose.
Yeah.
But when you look at what's going on politically, I really admire the work that Mayor Brandon Johnson is doing. He, to me, is someone, an elected official that we should do a case study on around the power of controlling the narrative. Donald Trump is trying to depict Chicago in a certain light and use crime as the precedent for him to do whatever he wants to do from a federal level. And I think it's clear that both the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago are leveraging every policy, every tool, every media outlet to make it very clear what is the true narrative about Chicago. And then, we can disagree about policy. We can disagree about political opinion. But when it comes down to the culture of Chicago, the improved situation of Chicago, it's still very segregated and some things that they have to work through as any big city does. But in terms of pushing back against all of the resources and the extracting that's happening from the federal level, Chicago is a gold standard.
Yeah. Did you always know you wanted to go to college, or were you pushed in that direction? How did your development come? Because I know you talked about, being raised by strong, powerful women. But in regards to your education and your pursuit, as a young black boy growing up in the inner city, make that connection for me.
Well, it's funny, and I don't want to contradict myself, but I did say earlier that I didn't want to overvalue or overestimate the fact that I didn't have a father. But even when I was raised by 3 strong black women, it's funny because at the same time, the most memorable time where I heard someone tell me that I was going to be somebody is when it was my first black male teacher, Mr. Porter on the south side of Chicago. I was in kindergarten, and I remember him looking at me in the eyes and telling me that I was going to be somebody and that I was not like everyone else. And that's something you remember, because little did I know I would go all the way through elementary school, middle school, high school, and undergraduate without ever having another black male teacher. And then it took till grad school where Dr. Myers became my advisor and now mentor. So even when you grow up without a father, I think we subconsciously seek that direction from another black man. And for me, it happened to be my kindergarten teacher, and I'm forever grateful for that. Because who knows? I mean, if he had not had told me that, if he had not helped me envision myself in a more positive light, who knows if I ever would have realized that myself.
Yeah, see, I think that's powerful. And obviously, I'm a mentor myself and have a mentor leadership organization, which is the nonprofit Man Up Club. So mentoring has been critical for me. I had mentors who done the same thing. I think I call it like transformational moment was in high school. When a man came up to me named Mr. Kalish and asked me, was I going to college? And I had no aspirations to go. But he had told me, man, if you come to my house and you study, I'll get you a scholarship to any college in the country that you want to go to. And I took him up on that offer, and I had so many offers to choose from, be it academic or athletic. But at that time, I recognized the power of mentorship. And obviously you did too, as early as kindergarten. And I think that that's important. When I was talking, as a matter of fact, I was talking to Mr. Kithers the other day, and he was telling me that the most important time in which education is the most valuable is from kindergarten to fourth grade. I thought that was a powerful statement, that he made, because we were talking about, some of these programs that are, getting cut, and but one of the things that he was saying was he believes in the merit system. But at the same time, he also believes in equality. And so one of the things he was explaining to me was that when it comes to equality, it's important to have equality when it comes to education, and that every kid between kindergarten and the fourth grade needs equal opportunity for education, because that's what will shape them for the rest of their lives, and as far as, how far they'll go and what they'll do, with their education and what have you. In regards to mentorship, so you do community advocacy. Tell me a little bit about the community advocacy, because you do several things. Let me put it this way: you do community advocacy, you do business consulting, and policy advocacy work. Is that all wrapped up in one thing? Because I think that what you do is different levels of mentorship on different levels in different areas. But is there one level of mentorship or a professional career that you enjoy more than the other? Is there one is more of a passion versus the other, or do you see them as all encompassing?
I think they're all intertwined, but the umbrella is service. I think early in your career, prior to your career, really, you I would say as a kid, going to the Boys and Girls Club, I was never at home. I was always taking advantage of any nonprofit that was around somewhere. Then in high school, taking College Possible, Trio, taking advantage of all these programs helps you realize that your actions are representative, for better or for worse, are going to be representative of your community. And so I started to be more active in serving my community, in helping to educate those who are coming up in similar circumstances. Did you know about this scholarship? Did you know about this program? I know that you're an athlete, but have you ever thought about anything else? I want to help young black men see themselves as more than an athlete, not to be, a cliche, but I'm somebody who played high school, didn't plan to play college football because my brother was the D1 athlete, and I didn't actually fall in love with football until, senior year of high school, and luckily I was on Augsburg's campus trying out for the choir, and I had a vocal scholarship. I was a choir boy. I did musicals in high school, and then I fell in love with football and decided to play 4 years of college football, which was the greatest decision of my life. But I also am aware of the fact that black men sometimes become a self-fulfilling prophecy where they're only seeing themselves as an athlete because that's what people recognize them as, or they're only seeing themselves as the jock or the guy that's fetishized and sought after by the women around them, and so they only start to fall into that trap and behave in a certain way. And so I just, like I said, I had an opportunity to take about 15, 20 black boys on an HBCU tour last week and expose them to black culture in Morehouse, at FAMU, and all these other places. And I could see their eyes opening to the fact that when they go to college, it will be an opportunity for them to have a clean slate and portray themselves or present themselves on campus in the light that they want to be seen in. And that'll probably be the first time in their lives that they're able to have that opportunity.
Yeah, I find that interesting. Yeah, the Black College Tour, man, that's huge. That's huge. I think that's huge to the development of young people and for them to be able to see themselves in that light. I don't know how often, if you're from the North, or if you haven't been exposed to predominantly, if you're black and have not been exposed to predominantly black culture, what kind of effect that can have on you. I remember I went to Africa and I went to Kenya. But the first time that I went to Africa, I was blown away. Just blown away at the fact that everybody was black. Everywhere. I mean, it doesn't matter what you see. It's all black. It's like being here in America, and the majority of what you see of everybody is white. And so for me, that just blew my mind, man. And my mind was so open to that. So for young kids who have the opportunity to go to a HBCU or visit one and see it where it's just filled with young black people who are on a quest to get their education, man, that's got to be a very powerful thing. I think that it's important to be able for young people to get that black experience, though. In regards to community advocacy, man, what else do you do in regards to that?
So I do a lot of things. Mentoring young black folks is something that I'll do, my whole life.
Yeah.
Whether it's folks at church, whether it's the local nonprofit.
What church you go to?
Fellowship.
Okay, you're a fellowship. Okay,
Yeah,
cool. Okay,
so
got you.
The best black church in Minnesota. Pastor Elijah, shout out to Pastor Elijah. He's doing some good work. I mean, it's the first time I have a pastor that
He's young.
is my age,
Yeah,
a
he's
couple
a
years
young
older,
dude.
but
Yeah. I remember when he got installed over there.
Yeah, so I think he's making the word relatable, and he's closing that divide that we see in the black church from a generational standpoint. But so advocacy there, being involved in the church is important. Thinking about getting back into the church choir. We'll see about that.
Okay.
One thing at a time. And outside of that, I would say no matter what space you're in, having some level of mentorship with the younger black men that are in the room. So even in the professional space, I may not be a formal mentor to another black man, but if I'm on a board of an organization or if I'm involved in the work that you're leading as a young black man, I'm going to do my part to make sure that I can help support and advance that work. And there are other older black men that kind of we stand on their shoulders, and they were doing that first. And so I think about local leaders like James Burrows at Children's Minnesota, who's doing a lot of good work to make sure that he's bringing in, and he's not the last black man to be in a certain room or a boardroom. So service and community advocacy looks different. Sometimes I might be at the state legislature advocating on behalf of black businesses or black funded projects, things like that. And essentially the extent of mentorship and community advocacy, I say every year when I go back to Augsburg and talk to sociology students, I tell them advocacy is the skill set that you learn when you study sociology, and don't underestimate the importance of advocacy, because I've learned in more positions that I occupy in my career that people don't know how to advocate, and they might have good intentions, they might have passion for equity work, but they are operating and functioning as a gatekeeper because they don't know how to advocate for people that don't look like them.
Y'all know what it is, and you know what we do. Man Up Club, mentor leadership organization for young black males. And what do we do at the Man Up Club Presents? We give a voice to young black males across America. I have a young man here, Mr. Robert Harper, who is a very accomplished man. And oftentimes, when it comes to the Man Up Club Presents, we always want to be able to put ourselves in a position to present Black professional men to young men across America. Now, of course, like I said earlier, we give a voice to young Black males because oftentimes when it comes to the Black male voice, you have a lot of people speaking for our young Black men, but it's not so often that you hear from young Black men themselves. But more importantly, it's also not often that you hear from Black men who are very accomplished and who are on the grind for community and moving the needle forward on Black excellence that young Black males can glean from. So my guest today, Mr. Harper, he's a Greek, he's a Sigma. We'll talk a little bit about that. He hails from Chicago, Illinois, for those of you out who are from the Windy City. He's also a community advocate and a business consultant and does policy advocacy work within the community. And so we're going to talk a little bit, get to know him on a personal level. And so we'll allow him to be able to talk about, things in his life and how he got to where he's at, some of the ebbs and flows. Because, of course, that success, it can be a lonely road, and also you can have challenges and there's failures and what have you. But for those who continue to get back up, get on the grind, make things happen, those are the kind of people that we want to hear from. So what's up, Mr. Harper?
What's going on?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Good. So I've heard a lot about you. I've explained, a lot about you. You're a very accomplished man.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. So I just want to kind of dig in with you, man. Obviously, there's a lot that that you've done. How old are you? Let's start with that.
I'm 31.
Okay.
Going on 32.
Okay. Yeah. And so based on all of these things that you're doing, it's clear that you're very ambitious.
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. Where'd you get that drive from?
Honestly, mostly from the strong Black women in my family. Not having a father, growing up on the south side of Chicago in the 90s, during the war on crime, and all of the things that led to more than 10% of the Black population leaving Chicago and going elsewhere. Mm-hmm. A lot of us came north and came to Minnesota. So I think it's no accident or mistake or happenstance that God placed me in a community where I was raised by these women, and I look to them with a responsibility to be successful. I'm the third Robert Harper in my family, and just yesterday my mom told me that Robert Harper Sr. wasn't very he couldn't read well. So, and she said, you're doing the name, the family name proud. So at the end of the day, it's about making sure that I maximize the opportunity that those women gave to me by moving me to Minnesota, relocating us to a better community where we have access to opportunity and education. I went on to become the first in my family to graduate college and start a business and buy a home. But I still feel like there's so much more that I need to do to, position the next generation for even better.
Yeah, I love it. Let's jump in and let's talk about that, because you're talking about basically a legacy. When you talk about being, the third, that's really about legacy. So let's talk about let's go from the beginning, man. Tell me a little bit about how you grew up. What was that like? Obviously, you said you didn't have a father. I was the same way. But let's talk about it.
Yeah, growing up, man, I always say I had it better than some of my older siblings. And so, me and my siblings all experienced Chicago and growing up in the projects and being highly mobile, moving every year. We all experienced it differently because we were all different ages. And so I am the second youngest. And so my little sister is 4 years younger than me. And so we had opportunities and things that my three older siblings didn't have. And so being mindful of that, I'm just constantly, blessed at the opportunity to be able to attend better schools and to be able to have mentors and peers who were expected to go to college. So that I began, when we relocated to Minnesota, I just started to do what my friends around me were doing. I was often the only Black person in AP classes at Columbia Heights High School. And so when my friends said they were applying for college, I said, well, I guess I'm applying for college too. And so, I feel like it's my responsibility again to take advantage of the opportunities that I have that my other siblings may not have had earlier in their lives. Mm-hmm. So that's a big part for me. And then just constantly not being mindful that I don't want to make I don't want to let my circumstances define who I am. So I study sociology and criminal justice. I'm super mindful of all of the systems that are functioning against people that look like me. And so sometimes that means that you're constantly upset because the more woke you are about different systemic barriers, the more frustrated you are as you navigate this world. And so I feel like now that I'm conscious of these things, it's my job to not only navigate them, but to help other younger black men navigate them as well.
Yeah, I feel that. And you said a mouthful, man, and I want to be able to unpack a lot of what you said. So you majored in sociology and criminal justice?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And I majored in sociology with a concentration in youth development studies at U of M. Where'd you graduate from?
Augsburg.
Okay, I'm familiar with
Augsburg.
Augsburg. Yeah, I'm familiar with. I used to play football against Augsburg because when I first came to Minnesota, I actually came to play football for St. John's University.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
and
y'all whooped us a couple times.
and then I transferred to Division I at University of Louisville and then came back up and finished at U of M. So I feel exactly what you're saying when you talk about being woke to some of these systems, man. So, you growing up, so was it difficult for you growing up without your father? Because here's the deal. Within our organization, man, 80% of the boys in our organization are fatherless, that don't have fathers in their home. And like I said, I was one of them. I was one of those kids who, my dad, he had his PhD, his doctorate. He was a pastor, traveled the country, wrote books, and was an author. But he didn't have a relationship with me. And so I missed that, and then when I was in college, he passed away. So that was something that I never knew was something that I knew that I would never get. And so, interesting enough, I just got contacted recently by his children who I'd never met. So I got a lot of brothers and sisters, obviously whom I've never met. But one of the things that I talk about, man, is how we try to normalize young black males not having a father. And I don't think that there's anything normal about that. I think it's important for us to know who our fathers are, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, if for no other reason, just to know who we are and where we came from and why we move and think and operate the way in which we do. But what was the experience like for you, man, when you grew up, and did it have any implications on your life not having your dad around?
Yeah, I tell people all the time I might be a unicorn in the sense that I don't personally feel that I'm particularly handicapped by the fact that I don't have a dad. I'm not saying that I don't understand the data that's very clear that when there's a father in the home, outcomes are typically much better for young people, especially black men. So I know that it's important, but for me, I have just unintentionally, subconsciously sought it out from other places like mentors. And so having the opportunity to be a Page Education Foundation scholar and learn from all-time greats like Alan Page, and to understand that value of mentorship early on really shaped who I was. And to me, that was much more meaningful than the relationship with a father that I didn't have. And so I know who my father is. I know where he is. He calls me about maybe once every 1 or 2 years, 3 years. Somehow he'll get wind of something that I posted on social media, and he'll send me a Facebook friend request that still hasn't been accepted. But I don't have any ill will towards my father. I understand that a lot of people, a lot of young men, regardless of their race, are growing up without a father in their life, and it is what it is. I don't think it's an excusable action by any man. I think you should take care of your responsibilities, and for that reason, I really aspire to be, a great father when that day comes.
Yeah, absolutely, and I completely understand where you're coming from. So you talked about being raised in Chicago. Was it South Side?
South Side.
Okay. Yeah. What was that like?
So my siblings, when they listen to this, will laugh because they'll say, "Well, you didn't really grow up on the South Side. We moved when you were 10 or whatever." Right, but I still feel like that's the community that shaped me. I don't care what anybody says. I think I feel very strongly that you can't tell anybody where they feel like they were raised. Some folks will say since I moved to Minnesota in middle school that I was raised in Minnesota. And I just feel like you were raised wherever you feel most aligned and where you feel like your values mostly came from. My values, I feel like, came mostly from my grandma, a strong Black woman who navigated the South Side of Chicago in the early 1900s and managed to not only make her way to being the matriarch of our family today, but to still have a property, a home in a city and in an area where they've been trying to gentrify our community. And so continuously watching that community change over time when they broke up the projects and crime spiked in the 90s and folks fled. I think it speaks volumes about the fact that my grandma stayed there on 39th and Wells. And so that strength and that commitment to community is something that I feel like she poured into me indirectly. She probably is not even aware that she did that, but that's important.
Yeah. So I got my man, Robert Harper, in studio with me, man, and we just breaking down a lot of different things in regards to Black America, young Black men, young Black boys, politics, the whole nine. Obviously, you know, you've heard that he deals in a lot of different areas from community advocacy to business consulting to policy work. When it comes to business consulting, man, tell us a little bit about what you do in that regard.
So I fell into business consulting essentially straight out of college. Like I said, I graduated with a degree in sociology and criminal justice. Never aspired to do business. I guess I shouldn't say I didn't aspire to do business, but again, that self-fulfilling prophecy. I'll never forget that my sociology teacher in high school asked me, you know, you got a degree in sociology. Don't get mad at me if you don't have any money. And so I've always been motivated to flip that old tale on its head and say that you can get a liberal arts degree and you can do business. I think sociology is great that it can be applied to anything.
Well, I got to interject because I was told that exact same thing when I decided to major sociology. So you ain't a lone ranger in that.
Right. And I think that you can take that passion for community service and social impact and turn that into a strong business model. I had the joy of interviewing for a youth entrepreneurship coordinator program for a summer job straight out of college. So I hadn't gotten any full-time jobs, any salaried jobs. And shout out to this brother, Daryl Pill, who wanted to hire me. And as I left that interview where I was focused on young people, he offered me a full-time salary position as supplier diversity program manager. I didn't know what supplier diversity was. I didn't know what procurement was. I didn't know what supply chain was. But looking back now, 10 years later in my career, I can say happily that I was interviewing for a business position. I was just speaking different terminology. And I think I've been successful in my business consulting because of that approach, where I'm able to connect with people on a human level to really learn what it is that they're trying to accomplish. And I just, as an advocate, feel like it's my responsibility to help them be successful. If you know a brother who's an electrician or a painter or a a contractor, and he's not getting contracts or opportunities to grow his business, then that means that our economy is not operating at an optimal level, which means that there's jobs that are being lost. There's a more likelihood for folks to be applying for social welfare benefits. So everybody wants to talk about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. For me, the problem is that a lot of small minority-owned businesses aren't able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps because they don't have boots, as folks say. They aren't being given an opportunity to bid on projects. White male-owned companies that have had contracts for decades are continually renewing those contracts. And to me, that's systemic oppression. And we have a responsibility to disrupt that because a lot of these institutions are funding projects with our tax dollars. So that to me pisses me off. I don't know. Everybody wants to talk about how Democrats tax us too much or Republicans don't tax us enough. To me, you can tax me as much as you want. I really just care about what you're doing with my money. Now, if you tell me that you're taking all our tax dollars and 99% of them are going to white males, which is what's happening, now I have a problem with that because I know for a fact that there are Black and brown folks who have a skill set to do a whole lot more than 1%.
Absolutely. It's interesting to hear you talk about that because, you know, for me, I'm an entrepreneur. Me and my wife, we own 3 companies. Obviously, the Man Up Club, which is a nonprofit, mentor leadership organization. But to your point, we also own a commercial construction company and have done very well here in Minnesota and helped build some monumental projects when it comes to, Target Field, the light rail, Great River Energy, and, currently working on, some serious projects in downtown Minneapolis. So I know firsthand when you talk about some of these disparities and inequities that happen in the construction industry, more specifically.
I was wondering why you look familiar.
And within the trades, yeah. So, I find that to be very interesting. And it'll get even more interesting as this administration continues to cut these programs, such as the DBE programs, and some of those other programs. Because obviously those programs are in place because a lot of these major billion-dollar organizations are not even meeting the participation requirements to involve people of color on those projects. So to cut them can only be worse. So to your point, I think it's the work that you're doing, the consulting that you're doing, is very much needed. And you hear us talk about these percentages, but these small percentages carry a lot of money when you're talking about millions and millions of
Billions.
dollars. Yeah. Well, yeah. There you go, billions of dollars. And I find it interesting. So tell me what is your ultimate goal and ultimate plan in regards to educating Black families, and then also. What do you think about the programs that are currently under fire and where you think that'll lead us to?
Well, I know some people are focused on home ownership. I know that the most common way to accumulate wealth in this country still is home ownership. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to act like that's not important. Mm-hmm. But what's always bothered me is when we have a conversation about buying Black, we're always talking about going to a restaurant, a soul food restaurant, or buying some Black-owned apparel from Actively Black. Or, to me, those are great. Those are personal purchases that you make with your personal money is reflective of your personal values. Mm-hmm. That's important. But what's more important
is where you're going. I like it.
What's more important is what our institutions are purchasing.
Absolutely.
And how they're purchasing.
Yeah.
Because that is a multiplier of what we could ever purchase personally. And so the way that these local cities are getting away with just hiring their friends to do jobs is systemic oppression. Mm-hmm. And that is, I feel like my anointing and my call to this fight is to help ensure that the proportion of Black folks who are qualified to contract are represented in the supply chain. And until we reach optimal or equitable, then I'm not gonna stop fighting.
Yeah.
And other people have other fights to pick up. Some folks are focused on education equity and closing the opportunity gap.
Yeah.
Some folks are focused on helping Black folks buy homes. Some folks are focused on criminal justice reform. All of these things are part of the same fight. It's just a matter of figuring out what your calling is. And that I think that is at the core of why I am so big on mentorship and advocacy, because I want to help young Black men figure out what their call to the movement is.
For the time that we got left, man, let's go a little deeper. What do you think the biggest issue is concerning young Black men among themselves? So if you were to give words of wisdom or to speak on in Black empowerment, because, obviously systemic things, they're systemic. I to your point, people have their areas of interest where they're working hard at it. You talked about your area of interest. Obviously, I have mine, which is in mentoring and education. One of yours is in business and business development and economic empowerment. But for the sake of speaking to young Black men based on what you see in modern day culture, is there any kind of advice that you would give to young Black men as far as internally introspective areas where things that we need to do, things that you see, areas that we need to work on, things that we can do amongst ourselves, where we don't have to wait on anybody else to help us develop, and where we can develop ourselves. What are you seeing when it comes to young black male culture in America right now?
My advice to them would be to not let anybody put them in a box. That to me is something that I took to heart at a young age. Like I said, I was at every nonprofit that there was. I was participating in every program that was offered to my age group. I was singing in the choir. I was performing in musicals. I was playing football. I was trying to play basketball. I was trying to run track.
Just trying to get it in everywhere. I feel you.
I was doing Students for Racial Justice.
Yeah.
I was always big on, you can't put me in a box. You can't say that I only have to be this one thing. And I think all too often, young black men are sticking to what they are good at. You know, I think of, one of my good friends, Andrew, and this Nigerian brother is an engineer and one of the most brilliant people I know. And I think of him because if you have a particular craft that you're great at, then your call to movement can still be, how are you going to, as Kevin Warren, the Bear CEO, always says, send the elevator back down? How are you going to pull other black men like you into this engineering industry? What is the unique perspective that you bring to that industry? So that's my call for young black men. Really figure out whatever it is you're passionate about or skilled in, and how you can make sure that you're not the last person who looks like you to be in that space. One of my biggest issues with Minnesota is that, in my opinion, a lot of the black professionals, especially young black professionals, have gotten too comfortable being the only in a lot of these spaces. I have never been out for self, almost sometimes to my own detriment, where I've talked myself out of contracts because I'm referring other friends. I think that's the Chicago mindset in me. I put our community before myself a lot of times. And something about this Minnesota young black professional culture where folks don't do that. We get a little too comfortable being the only, and I'll never be too comfortable with that, only being the only black person on this board or the only black person here. I'm always like, where's an opportunity to bring in someone else who happens to be black but has a skill set that we also need in this space? Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I think that's a very powerful and accurate statement that you've made in regards to Minnesota, because I see the same thing, and it's always concerned me about being the only. Even when it comes to community work, there's this thought out there that a lot of, black organizations in Minnesota work in silos. And so, I have a kindred spirit to you when it comes to that, because number one, I'm not used to it. Number three, I don't subscribe to it. And I think that we should be helping build each other up and collaborating and partnering and what have you. But that, I'm going to be real with you, man, that is a tough nut to crack here in Minnesota, and I've seen it happen on many levels. And there definitely needs to be something that needs to be done about that, man. It's been a pleasure to have you here. By the way, Kevin Warren is a friend of mine, man. So him and Tony Dungy.
Well, can you call him back and ask him why I didn't get that VP of Community Impact job? We'll talk offline.
Yeah, he's a good brother, man. But it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, man. I appreciate the work that you're doing. Continue to do the work that you're doing. And advocating on behalf of businesses and community and what have you, man. We need more people like you in the community, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Any last words from you, or how people can connect with you?
For sure. I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing. I mean, this is an important topic, and it's hard to find good mentorship programs. Everyone wants to create a mentorship program and try and get some grant dollars.
Yeah.
But, the impact is what speaks volumes. And so your commitment to this work, especially over time, and all the connections, leveraging the connections that you have to bring future generations into this space and to the center of the conversation, is something that I commend. So I thank you for, thinking of me as someone who might be able to offer 2 cents of good advice.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to continuing to tune in.
I'm going to make a statement. And when I make the statement, you tell me whether you agree or you disagree. And then I want you to elaborate on it. So the statement would be, black men are the greatest threat to society.
100% agree.
Would you agree?
100% agree. I say it all the
Talk
time.
to me.
We are the greatest threat to society, especially if we're educated black men. There's a reason that W.E.B. Du Bois called it the talented 10th. And I know that that's not black people trying to invite themselves into a more elite class of black folks. I would probably prefer not to be in the talented 10th, but I would say that I believe I am, and that's an anointing that God put on your life. You had a certain set of experiences as a child, you had a certain set of education experience, and then you led into a career. And the accumulation of all of that is you realize, if you're a man of faith, realizing that none of that was by happenstance and that God was giving you an assignment. Essentially, God was tasking you with what are you going to do with the lived experiences that you've had, and now the education and the position of authority and power that you have to do something about it. And so I accept that assignment that's been placed on me, and I feel like that assignment is viewed as a threat by a lot of folks, especially those in power, and particularly white men. It's no secret that, like I said earlier, we're sought after. We're fetishized, we're sexualized by the media, by marketing. I mean, you can look at things just as simple as the NFL draft combine and the way that they, rate the men's bodies dating, which is, brings us back to how folks were looked at and assessed when they were off of the ship and landing here in America. So we are the greatest threat to society, and I think that showed up in the results of our last election. Folks are threatened. White fear is real. And the unfortunate reality is that a lot of people of color are now falling into the trap of voting against their own interests. And that's unfortunate. They're leaning on, anti-LGBTQ, anti-trans, anti-abortion, single voting issues to then vote in favor of a person and a movement that is continually oppressing our population of people. And so I think it's on black men to stand up and to fight against that. Now, I'm not going to say that black women are not also viewed as a threat, but because we are men and because we are masculine, hyper masculinized, because we are given power and authority, and we have certain privileges that our black women partners don't have. That's why I say we are the greatest threat to society.
I remember wearing a shirt as a young man, and you make me think of this. It said, and I don't know if you've seen it. It said, "Danger, educated black man." How does that hit you? Because I thought that when I saw it from the perspective of kind of what it said, and from one perspective, I'll just say from one perspective. But then my aunt approached me. She's like, "Why are you wearing that? And why do you have to advertise that? Why is it important for you to advertise that?" It kind of gives a summation to kind of what you're saying. What's your thought about that? Because when you say, black men are the greatest threat to society, it's like, threat? Is threat the right word?
Threat is 100% the right word.
I'm asking because I want you to answer.
Because people are threatened by it. I think the data speaks for itself.
Yeah.
I mean, even when black men with a bachelor's degree still are having a lower net worth than white men with no degree. Mm-hmm. You could take it to the master's degree level. I have my master's degree, and white men are still being given opportunities to inherit wealth for doing less.
All right, let me cut you off. So is it threat, or is it undervalued and unappreciated? Because catch where I'm going. Because if when I'm hearing you talk, and it's just for the sake of conversation, black men are undervalued and underappreciated. In one sense, is what I'm hearing you say. But then when you use the term threat, that's kind of like, being an adversary to someone else.
I'll say again that it's 100% threat.
Cool. Go ahead.
I think threat is the
Let's
right
go
word.
deep. Let's keep
so
going.
you talked about your hoodie. I just got a hoodie. I went to the Legacy Museum down in Montgomery, Alabama. But before that, we were at Morehouse Homecoming, and I saw a hoodie, and it said, I read banned books.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that, to me, speaks to the threat. They know, white folks know, that the more you read about the history of this country and the oppression of black people, the more motivated you are going to be to change systems that today favor them. So that's a threat.
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
the last piece I'll say is when I went to the Legacy Museum, I remember looking at the white folks who were walking through this museum and seeing enslaved people. And I remember wondering to myself, what emotions did that trigger inside of them? Because I know what it triggered for me. It was anger, it was motivation, and it was a sense of responsibility to fight back against the systems that created those circumstances for my ancestors.
Okay.
And so to me, those are all things that you can't tell me that if you took every person in this country to the Legacy Museum, that this country wouldn't look different afterwards.
I hear you. So two words you use: anger. That it provoked anger, and it provoked motivation, and to fight back. So let me deal with anger and fight back. So then that's the premise under which you say threat.
Yes, if I'm angry,
People don't want you to be angry. People don't want us to fight back.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
People fear that.
Yeah, they don't want that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what I'm getting at. Let me.
Well, like they say, what is it? Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
I'm sure whiteness would prefer that black folks were unaware.
Okay.
More unaware of the circumstances that are stacked against them.
Let me go a little deeper and make this conversation a little bit more interesting. What do you say to black people, more specifically younger black people, new generation, who believe that the historical context of African Americans really doesn't matter, moving forward? Number one, because they didn't experience slavery. They're ignorant to the fact of the things that took place and the sufferings of black people and what have you. And that they say, well, it's unnecessary for me to be able to deal with all of those hardships and the mental aspects of even knowing those things and what it done. Case in point, based on what you said, because it provokes anger. It provokes, a spirit of wanting to fight back. There are young black people who I've spoken to who don't even feel like it's necessary for them to know their history, and more importantly, they think that knowing it is a hindrance. What's your thought behind that?
My words to them would simply be, if you don't learn from your history, you're bound to repeat it. So even if you don't think that what happened to our ancestors is relevant to your lived realities today, if you're somehow that disconnected, you can look at the policies that are being enforced today, the anti-affirmative action, the things that are being implemented to walk us back in history, right? That's a fact.
And Voting Rights Act included.
These things are being undone. And so we're going back in time in terms of policy and systems. So my question to those young people would be, if you don't think that the circumstances of your ancestors was relevant to your lived realities today, then what is to say that Donald Trump and the administration that's currently in office won't stop at slavery or Jim Crow? Or because if we're going to continue to walk ourselves back politically and socially, then how far back are we willing to go?
Yeah. And I think that's a great response, man. And that's why I asked the question, because I hear a lot of young people, who talk about that, and thus, not just young black people, but white people too, obviously wanting to erase black history. Don't even want that necessarily to be taught, in schools, which I think is a real tragedy. So that's one aspect, and I want to get into this further. But I do want to talk to you about your advocacy for business, because advocacy for business or consulting for business, I think is critical to the development of America and the ecosystem. And so I checked out some of your social media posts in regards to business development, and I think it's important to kind of discuss that. So we're going to jump back into it. It's your man, Mr. Dean. You're listening to the Man Up Club Presents on Holy Culture Radio. Hey, listen, I really want you to connect with us if you want to support our show. The Man Up Club only operates off of donations that you give, and so you can go to our website, which is themanupclub.org. Once again, that's themanupclub.org, and you can support our organization and partner with us. Or you can also follow us on IG, which is themanupclub.mn. Once again, it's themanupclub.mn. And if you're in the Twin Cities area, please make sure you stop by our clubhouse. We're open on Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. To 8 p.m., where we service young men through mentorship. We have a multiplicity of programming. We have a state-of-the-art recording music studio for kids to learn production. We have a culinary arts cooking program for them to learn how to cook and to also learn independent living skills. We have a construction program called Youth Build, and that's also for young men and young women between ages of 16 and 24. We have a fitness program. We give free suits to young men, go on field trips, have tutoring, do all sorts of things. So if you know a young man who needs to be mentored, we have a great staff. And one thing that I'm really impressed with about our staff, speaking on the topic that we're talking about, is that the majority of our staff are young black men who can pour into younger men. It's your man, Mr. Dean. You listen to the Man Up Club Presents. Cool, that was seamless.
I wish I knew how to ad-lib like you.